and the predictable mischaracterization of the speech by, first of all, a group of people who have a lot to hide, that is the opposition, and the media houses that have traditionally been hostile to the People's Progressive Party. So I thought it necessary for the people of this country once again to hear about the themes that I explored at Babu John. And there were several themes that I explored. The first theme had to do with the PR campaign of the opposition to present themselves as the change, as new. And I posed the question, are they really new? Is Granger new to politics and public life in this country? Is Harmon new to politics and public life in this country? Is Greenwich new to public life and politics in the country? Is Nagamutu new to public life and policy in the country? The answer by any right-thinking person would have to be a resounding no. They're not new. And the good thing about it is that most of us can still remember the record of these people. And somehow it's felt, and they get a free pass because they're shielded by some elements in the media from accounting for their record. And so if you are asking the people of this country to trust you because you're new leadership, then you have to have enough faith and trust in them to account for your record. And Greenwich has a record that is a dismal one. And I wanted to bring copies of his last two speeches in the Parliament, the budget speeches, for you. And as members of the media, you will be shocked by what he said about the state of our country and the impending collapse of our economy that took place under his tenure. And in the 10 years Greenwich was finance minister, he never once submitted an audited statement for the public accounts of this country to the National Assembly. And he is the biggest presenter and person who talks most about accountability today. And then Granger himself. Granger was a commander in the army. He was a confidant of the president at that time. He was placed in the army in a political capacity, not as a regular soldier. He was the politician in the army. He was one of the authors of the paramountcy of the party over the state doctrine practiced in that period. In fact, he wrote extensively defending it. Granger wrote several times in the news media that Indians are not suited for the army. The Granger was there when the weapons that was given to the PNC were lost. Granger was there when Walter Rodney was killed. Should he not say something about this to the country before you aspire to high office? If we were in the United States of America, and we love to use the U.S. as an example, he would have never been able to run because they would dig up his records from the past. But here we have a compliant media sometimes, and a media and a group of people who are intended to shield him from scrutiny. But he needs to answer for that past. And that is what I was saying that should happen. Accountability is very important. It seems as though we should be the only ones who have to be accountable for our actions. So that is the first theme that I explored at Babu John, about the same faces resurfacing now in new guises who want to rewrite the past and want this country to believe, particularly the young people, because they don't have memory of that past, that they are coming to the table with clean hands. They're not. They're not. I spoke also about the danger of having that philosophy in the future in this country. A period when violence and repression and suppression of the press was the norm. And Granger comes from that period, and even some of the features, you listen to the speeches and that he makes, and he goes back to that period for inspiration. You don't hear him talk about, or Nagamoto, their prime ministerial candidate, about the future. What are the things that are going to generate the wealth of the future? How we're going to get there? How young people are going to be involved, etc. You constantly hear about features of the past. So that's the first element. The second thing I spoke about is that the fluff that Henry Jeffrey spoke about in Granger's speech at the launch. I said, we had come to expect that there would be that the speech would be about fluff from him and Nagamoto. Because throughout the past 3 years, every attempt that we have made to get them to talk about serious issues. So you're opposed to the hydropower, you're opposed to clean energy, you're opposed to cheaper energy. What's your alternative for energy or energy security in this country in the future? What's your alternative to ensuring that our businesses can get cheaper energy to generate jobs? What's your alternative for people to pay a lower electricity rate? And what's your alternative, because it's a big toll on the balance of payment? How you're going to deal with that in the future, particularly in the wake of climate change and volatility in prices of fuel, etc. Not a word, not a beat. And so they're opposed to the Berbice Bridge too, and the rates and everything, but you don't hear alternatives. Have you ever heard Nagamoto, Ramjatan, Grange even, and Granger speak about their future with conviction? And I said to you, you ask me, ask any one of us, what are our plans for energy? What are our plans for ICT? What are our plans for education? What are our plans for health care? Where are the new sources of wealth? What policies we'll put in place? How are we going to tackle the infrastructural problems of this country? How are we going to work towards ensuring that every person owns their own home or housing policy? I can sit down now without a single piece of paper and go through each of these in great detail. Not just philosophical words, not slogans, but great detail. I can tell you orientation, how much we'll spend on them, where they will be located, what policies we'll put in place, what programs and projects will accomplish these. I can do that now. So that was the second theme of my speech, about our plans to the future, that what they have presented to people about this future is all about fluff. It's about promises. In fact, no real plan. The third issue that I focused on were our achievements. I said, even we become victims of this same short-term memory. And because we forget how things were. And many times, we don't look, some things are invisible. You can see the roads that have been fixed, and now everyone even remember how bad these roads were. Or you can see the schools that have been rebuilt, or hospitals, or maybe the sea defenses or something of that nature. But the core issue, where it revolves around the economy and returning this country to viability and to the strongest economy and the most vibrant economy in this part of the world, in the Caribbean, was a tortuous process of change. And I pointed out only about 10 of the things that we have changed. I can tell you 50. I can give you a list of 50 things that we had to change to ensure that today that there is enough money in the central bank to cover months of exports and debt servicing, that our budget is sustainable, that inflation is low, that we can spend more back on people. We have changed this country, and you see evidence of it. You know, it's not, if someone who's lived here 10 years ago and today, compared to today, would see change, and yet they haven't seen that. So I will come back to this theme about achievements, but that was the third theme of my presentation. The fourth theme, it was about, can we trust this new coalition? And I said, again, I posed a few questions about what will happen in the period after nomination day. That there will be no AFC. So AFC will disappear. There will only be a name maybe on the ticket, but there will be no AFC. There will be one ticket, one list of candidates, and one head of that list. And the head of that list has the right to recall any member from Parliament. The head of that list will decide who goes into Parliament. The head of that list is very powerful, can make all kinds of changes. And that since there will be no AFC, if the Granger decides that there will be 80% of the parliamentarians of the number of seats that they win in Parliament will come from PNC, there is no leverage that AFC has. They will not be able to, like what they did with us, pick up their bundle and walk away and all kinds of stuff. And no leverage because there is no party. There's only one party. And I don't know if they realize it or the country realizes that. So when they go out and campaign on the AFC banner, they're AFC anymore. There's no AFC after that date. And then I wondered if Nagamotu, who all of his life, who talked about rigged elections, and every person, right-thinking person in this country, even from the PNC, even Trotman once said, elections were rigged. Every government in the world, internationally, has written about this, believe this. Every media, every group that has observed elections. And one man believes differently, Granger. Granger says there were no rigged elections in this country. And you sit at the same table with the person next to you who says, no, this is not true. And all of your life, Nagamoto, you have fought against rigged elections. That's what you say. And then you believe that that person will keep his promise to you. Gotta be something wrong. That how out of touch can you be with the world and this country to deny rigged elections in this era? You have to be out of touch with reality. And Granger believes there were no rigged elections in Guyana. It is amazing. And so that I explored too, which is a legitimate theme to explore on the platform. And then I also explored the sloth in Parliament and the deliberate attempt of the opposition to stymie government projects and the sloth in many areas of implementation of projects, to throw us off of our vision, the vision of change. And that's, I said to Ramatar, that maybe sometimes we have to use different methods. Maybe not the most elegant language, but I do believe you have to kick asses sometimes to get things done. I do believe that. And not because you hate people, but because that is the attitude that you have to have in a country like ours, especially when it involves people's lives and bringing services to them. Whatever you have to do to change this country and to ensure a better life for our people, the methods are justified, even if you have to, not literally, but in a figurative sense. It is symbolic of a tough attitude. Kicking asses means symbolic of a tough attitude to getting things done. Not dilly-dallying, not wasting time with them, not sitting in hours and hours of the meetings with the opposition when from the time they leave your office, make all the promises, they go and change your position. You waste time with a lot of time with them. That is the attitude. It was a symbolism, the symbolism of it. And then I spoke also about Cheddi Jagan's vision. I made it clear, if you read my statements at Babu John, I said that we in the People's Progressive Party, this family, we've grown up not to pay attention on people's race, their religion, or their gender. That it will never be the PPP if we depart from that vision. That is Cheddi Jagan's vision. That is forefront in my speech. And then I said, we must fight racism. And I know, and most of the people, when I say this, know that it's true about what took place in the last elections. They know that people were deployed, and Harman knows this too, that they were deployed to go to some villages and to beat the drums. It happened in South. And to go to homes and say, let's throw out these coolie people. And then I said, if you read my speech and you look at the transcript, I said, had that happened in the People's Progressive Party, had one of our members acted that way, we'll kick him out. Because we are committed to fighting racism. We're committed. This is what we're about. Our track record is clear on this. But, of course, that morphed in the Kaichur news, and that I said it's a coolie people party, and that Rohi endorsed that. Absolutely untrue. If you read any right-thinking person, just read my speech, listen to it, and you will know. But, of course, I'm not going to get into what Kaichur news will do and what they wouldn't do. They're probably being paid to carry that line by the opposition, and they have their own orientation. But what I think has created so much unease in the opposition camp is because, and they will try to obfuscate the issue, to make wild accusations, because they want to hide from their track record. And so they will do everything so that we do not focus on Granger's record. They will do everything so that we don't focus on their lack of plans for the future of this country. That they will do everything to ensure that we don't point out the inconsistencies of their policies over the past 3 years. So cut $200 million from the University of Guyana, the student loan program, and then promise that you will give them, the children, their free education. Inconsistency. They will do everything to point that out. And so we don't have any apology to make for fighting racism. We don't have any apology. You've heard me on the platform 100 times saying that, and I will say that. I'm a son of this soil, and I will fight racism every single day. I made it clear at Babu John that this country cannot develop if its benefits are felt only by one group of people. cannot have a long-term future. And I believe in that. The record show it, my speech at Babu John. So any attempt to change that will not change the core issues. And the core issue is, are they going to do this again? Are they going to appeal to racism again? That seems to be the only tool that the opposition has. In this day and age, one tool. They can't campaign on their achievements. They don't even have a future plan that is viable. They have leaders that they're presenting to Guyana who are spent, weary from another era. So what do? What is the tool they use? They go to racism, hoping to polarize our people so that they don't focus on platforms, on policies, etc. They only focus on race. We're going to fight that in the PPP. We're going to fight it with all the vigor that we have. So those are in Broadway, not everything, but in a broad way, some of the themes that I explored at Babu John. These were the themes. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thanks, Comrade Bharrat. And now we'll be taking questions. Please state your name and the media house you're representing. Yes, Dennis.
Mr. Jagdeo, Dennis Shabbat.
Yes,
sir, you explained your approach with respect to the whole question of race and how you dealt with it in Babu John. But to what extent, or what would be your reaction to people who say that you raised the issue of race in a subtle way to appeal to your supporters?
I raised the issue of
in order
race.
To rally your traditional supporters.
I raised the issue of race because it is the only tool that the opposition used in the last elections, and they're back at using it again. And I urge a PPP crowd, there to say, we will depart from Chedi Jagan's vision if we don't fight racism. I want Granger to go to a platform where he has a PNC crowd, mainly. That is one of their rallies where the people go there who are mainly PNC supporters. And say what I've said. Say what I've said. Say, we will depart from Burnham's vision if you don't fight racism. I will take you a wager today that they will never do that. Because they can't say their public message often, it would send mixed signals to the people. Because what they say publicly often differs from what they say privately. Not unlike us. I'll say, I have one line, and that's the PPP line, fighting racism. I wish every politician would get on a platform with their supporters and say, you know what? In these elections, we should fight racism in all its manifestation. But they will not do it like I did. Because they can't tell their own base this. Because when they go to the whisper campaign to say Ramatar is racist and this person is racist, the whisper campaign, then people would say, but how you told us this on the platform? How did you tell us to fight racism on the platform? And now you're whispering other things to us. Because they use the whisper campaign well. And so I am proud of what I did. Raising the issue, it's not like it's not in politics and it hasn't been analyzed 100 times. I don't sweep it under the carpet. I raised the issue and I said, let's fight it. Fight it. And to a PPP crowd. I'm proud of that.
Follow up, sir?
Yes, please.
Yes, sir.
So we can get this one issue out.
Yeah.
Let's deal with this one issue
The
first.
quick issue is that at this time, the APNU and the AFC are going to be on a unified campaign trail. The AFC leadership appears to be people of East Indian ancestry.
Appears to be?
Well, you got Trotman and Jagdeos and all of that in the mix.
Okay.
How is it then that they can go out there and actually raise bait, based on what you said just now?
My feeling is that it is not done in the public way. It's the whisper campaign. it is the whisper campaign that has happened in the past. So in 2011, through various mechanisms, they did a whisper campaign on Ramatar about racism. But I had been 12 years president of this country, and I've gone to every community. And in my tenure, I don't think it resonated so much because people saw me working. But they used the whisper campaign, and they plan to use it again. They've started it. It starts on Facebook. It's anonymously, and then by a few individuals. And then it goes to the communities, and then it turns up on election day. Nobody is denying that actually happened. That people went and in some villages and were beating the drums at 6 in the morning and making racist statements. Nobody is denying that because it happened. It did happen, and it was written about. And so that is what we need to avoid, because that's racism. So that's how I see it.
But Mr. Jagdeo,
and this is an alliance of convenience. Now, this gentleman here. Yeah.
So you spoke in your opening presentation about the opposition not having viable plans for the future and inconsistencies in policies. I'm wondering, sir, are you prepared to, or would you have maybe advised Mr. Ramatar, President Ramatar, to publicly debate members of the opposition on these matters? And secondly, you made mention of Granger having to account for his record, the missing guns and what's
because he is running for president now.
Yes, but
presidency.
The question is, during your 12 years as president, what would you have done during that time
to
ensure that this would have happened?
Well, I can speak about my record at any point in time, but I'm not running to be president of this country now. And I can defend every element of my record. I'm prepared to do that at another press conference. You ask me any questions about the entire period that I've been there, and I'll be willing to answer. But he is running for president now of our country. He is saying, I will take care of all of the people of this country. And then he doesn't want us to focus on his record. And how out of touch could you be by denying there were rigged elections if he's out of touch on that simple fact that is known and that has been assimilated and accepted by this entire nation? How more out of touch would he be on other issues of development? That is what I'm asking. Isn't it legitimate to ask those questions? Is it not? Yes, the public debate. I think our president has said he's ready to debate Granger. I'm not running for elections. I debate any one of them, but I'm not the presidential candidate of the People's Progressive Party. But I will debate any one of them: Granger, Ramjatan, Trotman, Greenwich, any one of them, and maybe all of them together, if you give me equal time, all of them together. Yes.
Gordon, mostly news source. Mr. Jagdeo, sir, help me out here with my memory. Mr. Granger had served on the Discipline Services Commission while you were president, sir. While you were president. And he had put together a report along with other members of that commission with regards to the security situation in the country. And that report was accepted by your government and by the parliament. So would you consider it hypocritical that as president you accepted Granger's recommendations on crime and national security issues, but now that he's running for office, these issues that you say are important are now being brought up? Is it hypocritical?
No, because when you participate as one of a member of a group, then it was not Granger's report. Granger was one of the persons in that commission that submitted a report to me. Granger at that time was not running to be president of Guyana. Today, he is running to be president of Guyana. It has changed totally. Clearly, isn't it hypocritical for the media to not want to examine his record? In the U.S., if you're going to head a charity Nobody pays attention to your record, etc. But the day you say that I'm going to try to run for the presidency, getting involved even in the primary, then you have public vetting. You have the media trying to establish what the person did from childhood. President Obama had so much trouble because the Republicans some Republicans were arguing that he was not even American. You remember that he was born in Kenya, in spite of the fact that he responded several times to the issue. They had to go and dig up the birth certificates, etc. That's the difference. That is why there is no hypocrisy. If it was Granger, the ordinary citizen, then that tenure, it is concerning, but it doesn't matter that much. It's Granger, the presidential candidate now, who must come clean. And to say, doesn't it bother you to say a man who says, oh, there was no rigged election in this country? When the guy who is his prime ministerial candidate has been on the platform hundreds of times in protest marches against rigged elections. And they get along well. They gaze into each other's eyes and get along so well. In a private moment, wouldn't Nagamoto want to say, I disagree with you on that? And how do I trust you if you can't even admit that?
But sir, do you see that as an indictment on the PPP, when one of your leading members who would have served the party for 5 decades would leave the party to go be the prime ministerial candidate for this gentleman? Isn't that an indictment on the way your party has been doing business over the past 22 years?
No, there is one thing that we can control, and that is personal ambition. And so we were the wonderful party, the clean party, when Mr. Nagamoto sought to be our presidential candidate. He said, I want to be the presidential candidate for the PPP. That was in 2011. We had several people who were contesting the post at that time. He lost the post. He didn't get to be the presidential candidate for the People's Progressive Party. Prior to that, he had said falsely that Chedi Jagan had ordained him to be president or presidential candidate, falsely. He did not get the nomination, so he left our party. He went to the AFC, hoping to be the presidential candidate or to get an enhanced position there. And then they didn't succeed there, so he is drifted again to APNU. So that speaks a lot about the personal nature of the person, the character of the person, and what he sees as priority. Not serving the country, but his own place where he is. And I am happy to see that so many of the people from the AFC who believed that they had principles have left and now have argued that what has happened in this alliance of convenience is that the top leaders of the AFC have secured positions for themselves. Vice President's position, Prime Ministerial, Attorney General, etc. And they've forgotten the base of the party that believe that there should be a third force equidistant from the two major parties, and that was good for Guyana politics. They've abandoned that. And it speaks a lot about personal ambition. And the day that he left the PPP, the party that he was seeking to be the presidential candidate of, we became corrupt the next day. Not the day that prior to that when he was seeking to be our presidential candidate. Yes. Please.
Dr. Jagdeo, Marcel Thomas. 2 questions, and it's taking you to the use of the word coolie at Babu. Do you believe, sir, that using that word is divisive, or
I dealt with that.
That is one. because some would say it's equal to the use for blacks, nigger, and it incites that kind of
Emotive.
negative emotions in persons when they hear that. In a Guyana context,
Yeah, sure.
That's one. And two, you spoke about the beating of the drums and these whisper campaigns. Do you have evidence of such campaigns, and are you willing to share that evidence with us, the media, since you say you want to highlight it?
The thing is that I hope that this doesn't happen these elections, because they did the last elections. And what it's like saying to me, you shouldn't mention racism. We shouldn't do anything about racism because we know it exists. We know people speak that way. We know they actually use that language to campaign. But if we talk about it, then somehow we're exacerbating it. I believe I've always spoken against racism. You should really go after the people who used it in a derogatory way. Not me saying we need to fight this, because I'm not a coolie. I'm not a coolie. And I don't believe so I take offense at someone saying, let's throw these people out. Let's throw these coolie people out. That's what was said. So you're now, when I want to fight that, you're saying it's evidence of some divisiveness. It is the same thing like if somebody says the N-word about Afro-Guyanese and they fight it, that the people who are fighting it are racist because they highlight it and fight it. I believe that the mere fact that we're talking about it here today, the mere fact that we're talking about it, I hope that everybody would be vigilant on the campaign to see that we don't use that language, and that you, as well as as me, all of us, that you will keep your ears open to the whisper campaigns too. That you will keep your ear open and not have two standards. So if somebody gets into a little trouble in the PPP, like Rohi mentioned a lot of stuff, but they didn't take that. Look at I didn't want to get into this thing, but in APNU ad, the first ad that they had, I saw it in the Chronicle, about talking about decent leadership. They have a photo of someone who's been charged and now before the courts for pedophilia. Had we done that, put in our ad the picture of somebody and argue that this is change we want in Guyana, and put the picture of somebody who is before the court for pedophilia now, what would you have done to us? I cringe to think about what the Starbuck News and Kaitro News would have done to us. And here is a free pass. They get a free pass. In the ad that they talk about change. Don't our children matter? And then they're the same ones who would say we don't go after people who harm our kids. What is happening? Why the double standards? So that again I'm saying that we need to talk about these issues. We don't need to sweep them under the carpet. This country, the people of this country deserve it. When you go on the platform, we must assess people based on their plans for the future, what they're going to do about young people. Not about the whispers about them. Not about whispers. And this language, I criticized it. That's what I said. We must fight this. Had anyone used that sort of language in the PPP, we would have thrown them out. Read my speech. I'll send you the transcript of it. Okay, and you heard that part too?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm glad you heard it. I said, had anyone used that sort, I was condemning it. Condemning it. do not do that.
But
Anyhow, yes. Let's.
You didn't
What's it?
answer about the evidence. If you had evidence,
No, that's what I'm saying. From the last elections to now, I know I can bring maybe 5 persons who would tell you we've heard this. We're in our homes, heard that. They're drum beating and saying, coming to their homes, people walking down the street and shouting this. Would that be enough for you, or would the Starbuck News want me to sign it and have it notified, notarized and stuff like that? But your media, and listen, half of the time the people in here are aware of what I'm talking about. They just don't write about it because your editorial policy wouldn't allow you to do it. But we know the reality. Yes, this gentleman here.
Good day, sir. Handled off at HGP Nightly News. Sir, a lot of young people, talking with young people out in the community, they're asking the question, why is it we need to be reminded of what happened 25 years ago when we should be making comparisons with the rest of the world as to what's happening presently? You also talk about your opposition cutting student loans and things of that nature. Ultimately, the people of the country is what the party should be carrying out. And if you think the opposition, they're cutting student loans, definitely you're affecting students and so on. But when we look at ministers spending exorbitant sums, like the minister Pauline Sukai spending the amount of money to fixing our teeth, when we have probably matters that require that amount of money, like steering with food, features and things like that. Don't you think that goes against the vision of Jagdeos?
Yeah. Well, on the first point, if Grange was there in 1992, right? Grange most likely will be your finance minister. Are you saying we must not examine his record? This guy probably was the worst finance minister ever in our history. And that is what they're offering up to us again. The most unaccountable finance minister in our history, the one who presided over the massive growth of the debt from about 800 million to 2.1 billion in the period when he was Minister of Finance, escalation of the debt, the one who presided over the worst economic performance of the country, and the one who prevented the Auditor General from auditing privatization proceeds. And we must not pay attention to it. We must say, yes, Grange is a wonderful person and he will do a great job. That's what we must do. We have to be eunuchs for the sake of the opposition. No, we're not. Because people need to see that connection. And you as a young person, you've never really experienced the hardship that woman had. When under the Grange, the same Grange.
President, there was happening
yes, but
as a young person.
Yeah, but
I can tell you when I look at my other Caribbean colleagues.
Anyhow, it's not dialogue. It's not a dialogue. I'm saying it's not a dialogue here. I'm not some of the other people you have at press conferences. You ask me a question, I'm telling you. This is why the connection with young people. It is that somehow the opposition is counting on us not speaking about the past because you can't assess the change in the country. So most of you wouldn't have had a job in that period because there was only state media, and Adam Harris was the chief cook and bottle washer.
Not true.
Right, the state media. One state media. Most of you wouldn't have had a job, and you would have had your moms go to hours and hours at Guyana stores when there was a line there, and we had to get the horse carts, not the horse carts, the horse guards, to keep lines there so that people would get a pint of oil. And when students were going abroad, they get $100, and that sort of thing. And when I got suspended from school several times for having a different view and speaking up about it. That was the lot of young people. So I don't doubt that today there are difficulties. I don't doubt that we still have to improve our education system, that we need to find more jobs for a lot of our young people. We do have where a lot of kids come out of school and they have 3 subjects CXC, and maybe they can't go on to study because you need 5 subjects, and then they can't find a job too because you need about 5 subjects in the public sector. And they have a white-collar expectation. They don't want to go back to manual labor like in most countries they would do. So how do we ensure that a lot of those kids get jobs, like expanding the ICT, maybe that's kind of white-collar jobs, etc. There are lots of issues we need to work. And I agree that although things might be hard, because if you have a cell phone now, you had 200 cell phones in the entire country in the past, you have 600,000 now. And so if everyone has a cell phone and you have to charge it, and you have to pay $5,000 a month to make calls or $3,000, then it adds to the cost of living. Or if people have a car now, and look how many cars. I remember Georgetown, we used to go there to buy cook-up at the corner, and we'd see one horse-drawn cart passing there like after half an hour on the roads. I just tried getting here, and it's a nightmare out on the streets. But if you have a car, then you have to buy gas, you have to maintain the vehicle. It puts more obligation. So at the end of the day, quality of life has changed. But people still feel they have to make ends meet because they have to now meet a lot of other expenditures that they wouldn't have had to make in the past. I'm not sticking my head in the sand that young people don't have issues or problems. I'm saying comparatively speaking, and that's what is necessary. You have to establish a baseline, like in any good analysis, to start the comparison from. And that's the baseline I'm experiencing. The next issue you talk about was that. Yes, I spoke with President Ramatara about it. And he said to me that he plans to change this policy. That whilst he can't take away benefits from constitutional posts, elected people, including the leader of the opposition, that he will move mainly to maybe a policy of insurance, so that the charges against the consolidated fund will be limited. So if, for example, you spend $300,000 a year to insure, to create a policy for the person, then that's the extent of the exposure of the Treasury. And I think it's a good policy. It's a good policy. And so he has recognized that this can't continue. And he has made it clear that he intends to change this. I spoke with him about it.
Were you shocked and surprised by it, sir?
I know how difficult it is when people are sick, especially people in elected office. When the leader of the opposition in my period fell ill, and the bill went very high, and then I said, what do we do? Do we not pay it and then get accusations of all sorts? Or because this is a humanitarian thing, and then you work with these people? Or do we pay the bill? We eventually paid the bill for the leader of the opposition.
With $4 million on cosmetic
treatment. Yes, I agree that there are some issues that should not be funded by the state, that there are some issues that should not be funded by the state, and I think the president has made it very clear that he intends to limit people's access to the consolidated fund, and that the exposure of the Treasury will be only to the extent of the insurance premium. So that is correct. But I was very pleased to see that Mr. Granger said that he wanted it to be rule-based and that it should not be the subject of cabinet decisions or historical precedent. He did an interview with the Starbuck News, and I had a moment when I said, really? Because when Otto Chung got a pension, was 7/8 of his salary, got medical benefits as part of his conditions of service as president. Although he served a small period, he got the medical benefits, he got electricity, water, all the utilities. We hired 2 nurses for him, provided vehicles, he got duty-free concessions, he got everything. When Desmond Hoyt had that, the same thing that I kept on after his wife called me after he died. And we kept the security, we kept the payment of the utilities, the vehicles, everything with her. That Janet Jagan had the same thing. They were all subject of cabinet decisions historically. And I argued that the cabinet decisions alone should not be the basis of a charge on the consolidated fund. So let's take what all the presidents had before and ensure that we put it in a bill so that it becomes transparent. We take it to Parliament so that in future the head of the cabinet, the president, can't determine his own benefits. And we passed that. Then they said it's Jagdeo pension. Jagdeo took this for himself. The same thing that he's asking now for rule-based transparency that I did. And the thing is that Prime Minister Samuel Hines will get it and Ramatara will get it. It make it look like it's Jagdeo. And I served 12 years, more than Hoyt, Janet Jagan, and Otto Chung combined. And maybe Dr. Jagan combined, and they still have issues about my benefits when every president prior to me got those benefits, and they made a big hullabaloo because I sought to make it transparent. After that bill, no president in Guyana can take any benefit without having to take it to Parliament, get it passed in Parliament. In the past, it was just simply a cabinet decision and the president headed the cabinet. So that is what we sought to do, but we got slaughtered for it. I got slaughtered, but he is proposing it. I'm glad to see he's coming around a little bit to the same thinking I had.
Yes, you.
Right.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Jagdeo. You talked about, Javon from Frontline News. You talked about 50 things that were changed.
This is a new news now, Frontline.
Yeah. You talked about 50 things that were changed.
I've been out of touch for a while.
Yeah. You talked about 50 things that were changed in Guyana. Can you list the top 3 visible things and how was it different before you were president?
Okay. Well, first of all, hope about the future. The same thing about, in my view, when the U.S. Embassy says, the reason why we're giving out all of these visas is people are coming back. Hope that this country can realize people's dreams, and when they travel, they voluntarily come back. It is that change, the lifting of the weight from a society that wasn't free and undemocratic to one where people can say what they want without having to fear that somebody will kill them or harass them. A society where people can, on their own strength and their own capacity, make changes and progress. Now the state controlled everything. So freedom is one, the restoration of freedom. The second thing is, and I can give you how those freedoms were, what was done to establish, to restore the freedom. The second one was taking a bankrupt country that couldn't pay its bills and making it into the most vibrant economy in the Caribbean. That's the second one. And the third one, I think it's the elements of the future. The identification, the only country in the region that has identified new sources of wealth creation, an exciting future. 3 things, if you want, in broad, I'm just giving you the broad areas. I can tell you about. I can substantiate these with a list of projects, policies that we put in place, etc.
All right, you got Kaichur, then Giri.
Kaichur.
Abina.
Yeah.
Sure
has a lot here.
Please forgive my voice. Mr. Jagdeo, you said in your opening statements that Guyana cannot develop if benefits are only felt by one set of people. I would like to know, how would you respond to persons who may say that the story of your presidency is about only one set of people benefiting? Also, you spoke.
Who is set of people? Let's see what was mentioned. Listen, ask her, who is this set of people? One set. Which set are you talking about?
Which set?
Yeah. Which set you're talking about? Since if I mention the word, it becomes controversial. Which set?
Many persons, politicians. Oh, which set of people benefited?
Yes.
Oh, well, persons are saying like the Bobby Ram groups of Guyana.
Oh, okay. Well, then that's it. One set. So you're talking about individuals, and that we've been fair. Okay, across race. So I'm glad that you don't get. It's not about race.
Oh no, I wasn't speaking.
Okay, I'm glad. I'm very happy
You're
about that.
Speaking about your friends.
Okay, all right.
Yes. So that question, and secondly, you said in speaking about the coalition, AFC, APNU, and the head of that list, you said that he will have a lot of power, which will be Mr. Granger. Could you respond to people also who said that you were once in that position, you had all that power, and you abused it?
Well, that's absolutely untrue, because the people who told you that, I was never head of the list. Don't you realize that?
No, but you were president.
Oh, yeah, but no, I'm talking about head of the list. You need to get your question straight. You linked it to being the head of the list.
Hold on.
All right.
So, I was never head of the list.
2006.
Ramatar, the general secretary of the People's Progressive Party, has always been the head of the list. So that's one. But we didn't have a confusion because we were in party. The president, I had the full support of my party. I didn't have to worry about them throwing out our MPs, etc., like they have. So that's one. The second thing is that I wonder if Badal is Jagdeo's friend. I know Badal used to come to the Ministry of Finance when I was Minister of Finance and sit down for hours outside. He used to get a couple of tons of rice and export it to Jamaica. And Badal today owns a ton of things. Factory, the feed factory, the hotel, etc. I remember Glenlal used to sell shoes, I think, in the border market, Starbuck market. Glenlal has a media empire now, tons of other things. I don't think Glenlal is my friend. I remember C.N. Sharma used to do refrigeration. He was a refrigerating technician. Today, look at all those properties along there. Tons of properties. There was no Nigel supermarket. There were no. I can list a thing. There was no Amelia's Ward. So all those houses in Amelia's Ward that you see, the wonderful Amelia's Ward. There was no Eccles housing scheme, that all the big houses you see there. There was no Diamond. You know, really, is it only Bobby Ramroop who made progress in this country? I can list tons of people. I know that most of you drove and come here. Oh, you didn't drive? Well, then your editors are doing a bad job. You should get them to pay you more. Anyhow, all right, okay. The thing is but that is my answer to them. I have seen changes in this country. I've seen the economy go from $300 million to $3 billion. I've seen more people own things. I've seen more people build facilities like the Gravity. There was no Gravity. There was no 704, all Oasis, a ton of these things. I don't know, they're all owned by Jagdeo's friends. And so I've seen big things happen, and I've seen small things happen. I've seen people, but I'm not saying we have solved all the tasks of the country. I'm not saying that. But I've seen changes in many, many people's lives. Gordon, mostly.
Mr. Jagdeo, sir, you have spoken about the need to educate young people who were not necessarily around about the past. Sir, do you think you're being a good history teacher when you're focusing
Since
on...
when did I claim to be a history teacher? I'm not a history teacher.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, you're presenting the facts, the history from...
No, but I'm not a history teacher.
Okay, so do you think you're...
Are you a history teacher?
I never did.
Okay, well then, all right.
History, but
Okay.
I didn't teach history. But sir, do you think you're being fair when you talk about lines for oil, when you talk about lines for flour and stuff like that, and you do not say to these same young people that those lines ended under Desmond Hoyt and under PNC government and not after 92? Do you think you're being fair in trying to put everything on the table to them?
Yeah, but let's also talk about the policies in that era and what happened. That when we became bankrupt, we couldn't pay our bills. The IMF declared us uncredit worthy as a country, a bankrupt country. They were forced to go abroad begging, basically. And I saw Grange and a few others, and a structural adjustment program was imposed on this country. Imposed on it. And that's how they forced the changes in policies, liberalization of trade, ensuring that the public sector was shrunk, running a primary current balance of a certain level, cutting some types of expenditures, ensuring that money that were held outside the treasury that were brought into the treasury. Since I made this point, allow me to digress for a moment. I've seen this big hullabaloo about GGMC running a parallel treasury. But the GGMC Act allows you to keep an account outside of the consolidated fund. But not a cent of this money, the 3 billion, will go to Ashni Singh, or to Robert Prasad, or to Irfan Ali. These are 3 bright young ministers who've been trying to solve 2 problems. There is no parliament now, and we know that Gaisuko needs help. So, the account now earns probably less than 2%. So they're getting a commitment investing this money that will bring greater returns to GGMC. We then help Gaisuko to get over this difficult period. And the money is used to secure 1,000 acres of land that will develop 5,000 house lots in Region 5, in Region 4 here, that will make sure that 1,000 Guyanese families become owners of some piece of property. So if the opposition is trying to kill it, they're really saying to the sugar workers, you shouldn't be helped, and the industry should collapse, because if they don't get the money, they can collapse. This government is not going to allow sugar to collapse. And so the thing is that APNU and AFC, this coalition, wants sugar to collapse. That is why they don't want the resources to go to the sugar industry. And secondly, are they saying that we should stop the housing program? Because the land in Region 4, the only way we can get more lands for Region 4 to develop housing is from Gaisuko. There are no other private lands. So the government is buying land from Gaisuko, and by the same token, it's helping Gaisuko, but it is also ensuring that people who live in South Georgetown and other places who've been on the wait list, that they can get a plot of land in the future. So Not that anyone would steal the money. They're arguing about procedures. And they lose sight of people. One, the sugar workers, and two, the people who need the house lots. So, when I hear about this parallel treasury, and even Greenwich and the former Auditor General speaking about it, and then I know that in 1992, again, that when we exported the gold, so the gold was bought with an advance from the Treasury, from the Consolidated Fund. The gold was sold in Canada and then kept in an account in Canada that was controlled by the Office of the President. It was never paid back into the Consolidated Fund. And the Office of the President controlled the proceeds from the gold account in Canada. They use it to pay salary. Some people $15,000 a month. I don't want to mention the name. The person has died now. $15,000 a month. Some PSs who Hoyt had brought in at $10,000 a month at that time, US dollars. And they used it for a whole host of other purposes. And that was in the tenure of Anand Gulsaran and Carl Greenwich. And the two of them today are the most vocal people about parallel treasuries. It shocks me. It shocks me to the duplicity, the barefacedness of this whole thing, the shameless, thing, the shameless belief that we all have such short memories. I don't. But they know that most people would not know these things. So then they talk about they're reborn, new, fresh to the table. That is what bothers me.
I was asking generally, sir, if you think it's fair.
But it is fair. It is fair. So the comparatives, I just did one to show you why we need to educate young people. Because most of you here, how many of you knew that about the gold proceeds?
I did.
Oh, well, Adam was were you paid from the account too?
No, but I also know
right.
that you paid similar sums to people in your staff. Kobe Frimpong was $15,000 a month, and the list is long.
Kobe,
so you were doing the same thing?
No, not. You listen, two different things. You see, Adam Harris is clever. The same thing. First of all, Kobe Frimpong was never paid from a fund that was held outside the Consolidated Fund. Kobe Frimpong worked in Guyana prior to 1992. He was working at the State Planning Secretariat, receiving the same sum of money from the World Bank. Then Kobe Frimpong moved from the World Bank and was funded by US Aid.
Yes.
So this is where the source of the funding was different. It's not the same thing by far stretch. We didn't pay Kobe Frimpong from a fund held outside the Consolidated Fund illegally. He was hired, and he is a good person. But again, because he turned out to be my friend, and maybe I shouldn't have friends, he turned out to be my friend, but he's a solid technical person, and I knew him before 1992. Before 1992. So it didn't happen after 1992. No. This young lady here, and then you. I come to you. I didn't see your hand. All right.
I just wanted to get a clarification. So are you confirming that the $3 billion from GGMC was always intended to go to Gaisuka?
Huh?
Are you confirming that?
Because if GGMC, it goes to GGMC, and GGMC uses it to buy the land. Not GGMC. Sorry, housing. And then they use it to buy the land to secure the 1,000 acres of land that will then develop 5,000 house lots.
They're saying mining areas.
But mining, no. These funds are state funds. They don't belong to the mining sector. The money accumulates from the royalties and from taxes, the 2% taxes. This money doesn't belong to the mining sector.
I'm not saying the housing that they're going to build for mining areas.
No. They never said that, because we have used money in the past to build roads in the mining communities, a number of other things. And so it has nothing to do with mining. It's like saying all the money that the government takes from the mining sector should just go back for mining. Like all the revenue. So if all the revenue we collect from Barbies must only go to Barbies. We don't balkanize revenue. We don't balkanize revenue. Anyhow, yes.
Neil Marks, Capital News. Sir, in the interest of transparency, could you say why it is that you flew to the States in a private jet? For what was it an urgent medical situation, and how much?
That's none of your business. That's a private thing. The state didn't pay for it. It's none of your business because the state has not. Since I left office, I've been on 2 checkups. That's it, directly, and I have not been reimbursed for it. I haven't received a cent on medical expenses since I left office from the state. Not 1 cent. And so Starbuck News had it wrong because they said that the state paid for this. The state did not pay. That's my private business. That's my private business. Right. I asked you who paid for your friends or woman. Yeah, exactly. No. But it could be who pays for your friends. I don't want to say who pays friends. Yeah. Well, I should. I don't want to get into that because I'm known for that, and that becomes the story tomorrow. So that's. But the clear thing is that I have not received a single cent from the Treasury for the 3 years that I've been out of the office for medical expenses. The state did not pay for any medivac for me. Nothing of the sort. Private business.
So just a clarification, do you intend to ask for reimbursement?
No, not for the medivac. Not for medivac.
Okay. Just my substantive question, sir. Would Dr.
I have for my checkup, but not for the medivac.
Would Dr. Chedi Jagan, that is, would he have been happy with your mention of all the East Coast and that of other senior government officials? I'm asking in the context of the Jagan children criticizing the accumulation of wealth by PPP leaders and saying that it was not something that was in the vision of their father.
That Chedi Jagan wanted us to ride motorcycles all our lives. Let me tell you something. I don't think Chedi Jagan living in Bel Air Park at that time in a nice house was typical of most of Guyana. But Chedi Jagan lived at that time there. Did that weaken his commitment to the cause? Because at that time, that was a prime... I think it's Bel Air Park? Bel Air Park. New Haven. That was a prime area. It's a big piece of land, a nice house. And it still is a nice house. And did that weaken his commitment to the cause? Did that make him, corrupt? Or anything of the sort? So, what is the point you're making? And what are they making? Because he lived there, but he was committed to the cause. My thing is that when I built my first house, they said it was too big. Then secondly, that I sold it for a lot of money. Which is not so much now. Because I know a lot of people now selling their houses for 2-3 times more than I sold mine for. And diamond. Okay, well, I don't know. But that was the criticism. And then if it's so much money that I got, where I got money to build a new house, and that my pension was too high, my salary was too high, and then they question all of that. But let me tell you, in 20-odd years in public office, if the worst thing that they can say about me is that I have a pension that they try to make look like I took for myself, which is not true, and that I have a big house, and that I earn now a lot of money abroad, then I'm good. After 20-odd years in public office as Minister of Finance and President, and everything that I do, I'm transparent about it. So I don't want people to think. We would like to see everybody progress. everybody progress. So if you look at, again, I mentioned, I don't believe that ministers should have to live in a logie to prove that they're not corrupt. I don't believe that, because I believe they should, what they achieve honestly. Why should they be ashamed of investing their money in a house and a nice house, etc., like so many people are doing or aspiring to do? Why should they have to prove that? Chedi Jagan didn't have to prove that by living in a logie.
All right, sir.
Yes. Hello. Who else? One more. I end with Starbuck News.
So you ignore
my question is, do you think, and share your views on it, do you think you're an asset or a liability to this PPP party?
I don't know, but the base wants me, and so I'm here.
Just.
Thank you.